Live from New York at the opening bell, this is Business Today, chasing the Fed. The Dow is close to a record high after Jerome Powell indicated a US rate cut is on the cards. We'll get the latest on the US markets. Plus, don't blame the messenger. Telegram says its billionaire founder isn't responsible for illegal content on the app after he was detained by French police. And the prejudice premium. Are African nations paying more than they should to borrow money? We hear from the boss of the Africa Finance Corporation. Welcome to Business Today, live from New York. I'm Michelle Fluery, where US markets have opened mixed. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is closing in on a record high. Both the Dow and the S&P 500 are both at their highest levels since mid-July. Now, investors are looking to push equities back to record high levels now that the Federal Reserve has indicated that that interest rate cuts may be on the way. Wall Street has been anxiously awaiting a rate cut for some time now, especially in light of worrying economic data that we had earlier over the summer, which caused markets to have, well, let's just say, a bit of a wobble. That sparked a sell-off, and it also worried investors and businesses that elevated borrowing costs could harm the US economy. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Jeff Grills. He is head of US cross markets and emerging markets debt at Aegon Asset Management. Thank you very much, Jeff, for joining us. Look, let's start with this. Where are we expecting markets to go this week? What is going to be the driver in markets now that we've had Jerome Powell's speech in the rearview mirror?
Well, I mean, I think for this week, we're going to have a pretty light volume week, given it's the last week of summer for the US and most of the other markets around the world. I do think that we've had a nice recovery from the sell-off we saw earlier this month. So my expectation is that with Powell indicating a move towards easing rate policy starting in September, markets will take that as comfort. We've seen them continue to grind higher in stocks. We've seen yields come into recent lows. And my guess is that that will continue on until we get more clarity in September about the health of the labor market and what the Fed will ultimately do.
OK, so that's the picture on the interest rate front. What about the earnings side? Obviously, artificial intelligence has been such a driver of the financial markets of late. And of course, you know, the biggest name of them all reports earnings after the closing bell on Wednesday. I am talking about the chip maker, NVIDIA.
Yeah, that's going to be a very important one to watch after the close of the market on Wednesday. NVIDIA has been one of the dominant leaders, part of the Mag 7. There's been some concerns about maybe sales disruptions, delays in their Blackwell chip. So I think the market will be looking at that one intently. Where the expectation is hopefully that sales will continue to grow, although it's been very fast paced and it might be something that's hard to sustain. And profit margins will be another key metric. So it's good to see that the market has rebounded. We saw most tech stocks come off pretty sharp in the beginning of August. We're now back towards the highs. That actually might be a little bit of a concern just because the market is expecting good news. But I do think that will be a driver for this week. And it probably will result in some exacerbated moves. Again, as I mentioned, with just the light week and end of summer, we might see market moves a little exaggerated. So, but I do think there has been concern about, is AI a bubble? There's clearly still spending going on. But if you look at parallels to the internet, there were starts and stops. And I think that's what people will be focused on for this Wednesday.
So you're saying buckle up your seatbelts this week, that because of light trading, because it is the last week of summer essentially here in the US, that it's going to be the algo trades, the computers driving things more than humans, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, if you look back to what I referenced before, the early part of August, I think a lot of that was algorithmic trading and some momentum models. And so it does make me a little nervous that you will see outsized moves. I think investors should probably try to look past that and really digest what does it mean for the next few quarters? Where are we going to go? I do still believe that spending on AI will continue to be robust. But for a chip maker like NVIDIA, they've been the leader. The question is, will they get competition? Will they start to see their margins erode? So hopefully it's just a shift in leadership and not necessarily a pullback and a concern about the overall growth. But yes, I agree. There will be some potential exaggerated moves given the state of this week.
Jeff Grills from Aegon Asset Management, thank you so much for laying that all out for us.
Great, thank you.
The Telegram messaging app has condemned the arrest in France of its billionaire founder, Pavel Durov. Telegram has insisted that it does abide by EU law and said it's absurd to hold its Russian-born owner responsible for abuses of the platform. Telegram has been accused of not cooperating with investigations into drug trafficking, child sex abuse images and fraud. Mr. Durov was arrested when his private jet was landing at an airport on the outskirts of Paris. That was on Saturday. The BBC's Pierre-Antoine Dennis has been following the story for us.
It was very important for the French authorities to get their hands on Mr. Durov because it's part of the big investigation into Telegram. As you said, they really wanted this big name arrested and questioned over, as you said, the allegations around Telegram's insufficient moderation and the insufficient step that they take to curb the criminal uses of Telegram, including drug trafficking and child sexual trafficking and fraud. What we also know about his whereabouts is that the Russian embassy in France has tried to make contact with the French authorities. In their statement, they're saying that the French did not want to cooperate. They're asking for consular access and wants to know exactly how he is doing. Mr. Durov is a French passport holder that he obtained in 2021. He also holds a passport from the United Arab Emirates, and his platform Telegram is very, very popular. Around 900 million users as of now. It is being, of course, widely known for the communications around the war in Ukraine. Both the Kremlin and on the Ukrainian side are communicating via Telegram, and this is why many people and have already taken on social media, including ex-owner Elon Musk, to try and call for his immediate release, saying in French, liberté, meaning freedom.
Are African governments and firms paying too much to borrow money, the so-called prejudice premium? That's the claim from Samela Zuberu, who is the CEO of the Africa Finance Corporation, a group created by African nations to help fund the continent's infrastructure needs. The BBC's Lukweza Bareka has been speaking to Mr. Zuberu about the funding challenge for Africa.
The first thing is that Africa continues to have the fastest growing economies. Some of the fastest growing economies are still in Africa. And of course, we're challenged by the debt situation that most African countries have. But what I always say is that we would always be in this situation because of the way our economies are structured. You know, we've been doing the same thing for the last 200 years or more and expecting different outcomes, which is not possible. So African economies are not structurally aligned. We are basically focused on producing raw materials, primary products for export. So we will do well when there is a commodity boom. Africa has over 40% of the minerals and metals that are required for the energy transition. And then we have significant renewable energy sources to process these minerals and metals. So we provide the least carbon intensive part to global net zero. You know, we have over 10,000 gigawatts of solar energy. We have 110 gigawatts of wind. We have 350 gigawatts of hydro. We have 15 gigawatts of geothermal and over 400 gigawatts of thermal gas. You know, so we have this abundant energy sources to process these vast minerals and metals that we have on the continent. So it will make sense to continue the current supply chain architecture whereby we extract raw materials and then we export them to far-flung areas to be processed and then sent back to the rest of the world. You know, if you look at Africa's equidistance to Asia, Europe, and America, this is a place to process it. And then more importantly, we have the youngest workforce and will have so for the next 3 to 4 decades. So this is Africa's unique moment.
Well, over the weekend, some of the most advanced racing yachts in the world are doing battle in Barcelona's Port Vale in the last warm-up race for the 37th America's Cup, ahead of the final, which takes place in October. The sailing competition has been going since 1851, making it one of the oldest in the world, but it is embracing new technology, as we've been finding out speaking to Grant Dalton, who is CEO of the America's Cup and veteran of 5 around-the-world races. He's been telling us how tech is transforming the sport.
Well, we just got to keep stepping it up, because in so many sports, tech is what allows the viewer to see it a lot more easily. And sailing's not an easy sport to understand. Two boats disappear in different directions and you're not quite sure what's going on. So tech is very much part of our lives. Stadium racing in close to the shore, big screens that allow the boats from a digital point of view to be seen by the viewers and understand. Try and explain to someone how a boat that sees 10 knots of wind is doing 40 knots or close to 50 miles an hour. I mean, I'm not sure I can work that out myself. The physics is unbelievable. They are certainly laden. And of course, that has its own problems. Sometimes that tech doesn't do exactly what it's supposed to do in the environment that we're in. But this time we've introduced another piece of technology to try and help the viewer on TV or online watch it a bit easily. And it's something that no human can actually work out, and that's the wind. And with Capgemini, we've come up with a laser-laden race course that projects the actual wind speed and direction to the viewer and allows the commentator to actually talk about the tactics that the guys on board the boats can use to get around the course the fastest.
Technology touching every part of our lives. Well, in other news, Uber has been ordered to pay a fine worth more than $320 million in the Netherlands for breaking the law by sending the personal data of its European drivers to the United States. The ride-hailing platform is planning to appeal the fine, describing it as completely unjustified. It is the DPA's third fine against Uber and follows a €10 million fine imposed just last year. Australians now have the right to ignore messages from work after working hours. A new right to disconnect law is designed to curb the creep of work emails and calls eating into personal lives. The law does allow for bosses to contact their employees in an emergency and when it's reasonable. More than 20 countries, mainly in Europe and Latin America, have similar rules. And the president of the Bank of China has stepped down from his role effective as of Sunday. That's according to a regulatory filing. The bank's head of the board has been named acting president. That's all we have time for. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.